Shabbat Shalom. How are you? Is it even fair to ask that question these days? How can we possibly respond to that question? Someone told me this week, how am I? I am in a bad mood, permanently. Bad mood is my default. Do you relate to this? While we may have moments of calm baking sourdough bread and watching Hamilton, overall, we are in a time of so much stress. It's as if we're at our wits' end. Comments that we may have just found annoying in the past, now we find enraging. Frustrations that we typically would take in stride can now seem like large roadblocks. Our every emotion seems heightened as if under a magnifying glass. And it's no wonder. We are going through communal trauma. And trauma impacts our beliefs about ourselves and about the world. It can be very hard to get in touch with our inner, evergreen, and resilient core. But Jewish history and Jewish beliefs compel us to not allow ourselves to become shrouded in despair. Rather, to persevere, to remain open as our ancestors had, to walk through dark times holding up a torch of hope. Hope takes courage. Hope takes faith. When the prophet Elijah was pursued by an evil king and his wife, he ran away. It was too hard. No one would listen to him. The people were worshiping false gods. They were destructive and they were divisive. We read, Elijah, frightened, fled at once for his life. He came to Beersheba and left his servant there, and he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. Enough, he cried. Now, oh God, take my life. Elijah was isolated, worried, exhausted, like many of us are feeling today. Staying home, away from others, worrying about our health, worrying about the great emergence of hatred and racism in this country, and worrying about the future. There is so much noise, so much worry. But it was after the noise died down that Elijah found God. He found God in a quiet moment after destruction and chaos. We read, there was a great and mighty wind, splitting the mountains and shattering rocks by the power of God. But God was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But God was not in the fire. After the fire, a soft, murmuring sound. And that is where God was found. In the soft sound. In the soft, still voice. Calm, quiet, internal. The Hebrew word for breath, neshima, is closely related to the Hebrew word for soul, neshama. And in this is a teaching. Every breath is a blessing. Every breath is a gift. And we read that God formed the first human being of the dust of the ground and breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. And in that instant, the first person became a living soul. We can use our breath, our life force, as a way of returning to our inner strength. When we find our breath, we may feel ourselves more open to a sense of hope. The very act of breathing can tell us a lot about our inner life. Are we holding our breath? Breathing with a catch? Forcing the out-breath? Become curious about your own patterns of breathing, not to change them, but to gain insight into how you are feeling and how you can use your breath to slow down and to find some peace in troubled moments. The body needs air, but what is the air of the soul? Faith, said Rabbi Eliyahu Lopian. When we talk about breath, we can't help but think of George Floyd, his horrific murder, and his last words, "I can't breathe." Many in this country have been and are continually starved of breath. There are people right now who are starved of the oxygen of humanity, basic rights, respect, equality, and justice. This time has brought to light the staggering inequalities in our nation. And yet sometimes, at the moment of the greatest despair, change can happen. We read in the Torah that our matriarch Rachel died during childbirth, and as she breathed her very last breath, she named her son, and she named him Ben Oni, which means son of my sorrow and anguish. But his father, Jacob, renamed him. In that same instant, he called him Benjamin, son of my right hand. In biblical times, this would be similar to calling him a great source of strength. COVID is a cruel virus which has stripped us of so much. Yet living in this moment has made us see our world with fresh eyes. It is my hope for all of us that some of what we are learning during this time will be of great strength as we go forward. By changing Benjamin's name, Benjamin, from a symbol of sorrow to a symbol of strength, Jacob demonstrates what it is to be resilient. Resilience is found when we are able, even in the midst of despair and uncertainty, to restore a sense of agency and choice. The Kotzker Rebbe said, "There is nothing more whole than a broken heart." While we currently would never wish to be at such a time of mass illness and distress, perhaps we can come out of it more whole through our awareness of our shared vulnerabilities and needs. This moment of tragedy makes us stop and reflect. And Judaism pushes us to ask ourselves, how can we be better? How can we learn from this? How can we move on with compassion for all of humanity and with faith that we can help make the world better? In pursuing these questions, may we find a sense of solace, strength, and hope. Shabbat Shalom.